So I would like to introduce this morning's speaker. Michael Levin is President and CEO of Custom Solutions, Inc. He has launched a variety of product and service companies and built them into multi-million-dollar corporations. His products, including those that he has patented, have been sold in every major drug retail, grocery, and mass chain stores in the country and around the globe. His products have been endorsed in O Magazine, and he has been personally featured in Entrepreneur Magazine. He is a 3-time #1 international best-selling author and has been interviewed on TV and radio shows around the country sharing his knowledge. He and his products have also been featured on Home Shopping Network. Michael's corporate career was with Pepsi-Cola, and he ran divisions in San Francisco, Oakland, and Reno. Now he spends his time speaking and coaching on his personally developed leadership and sales philosophies and process. Please welcome Michael Levin.
Good morning, how are you? Well, that was pretty good for the third day in Vegas. I'm impressed. I know you only got a few notes of that song, and it's pretty obscure. Does anyone know the name of that song? Okay, I'd have been seriously impressed, and I'm a little bit grateful because I do not have a painting to give away like Eric Wall or $100 if you guessed it right. That song's called Never Going Out of Style by Aaron Watson, and I chose it for 3 reasons. One, I like country and like the song. Secondly, because I don't think an entrepreneurial workplace will ever go out of style. And third, for those of you like me who can qualify for your AARP card, I hope to never go out of style either. I want to start with a quote from Apple founder Steve Jobs. He said, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do." To me, this embodies an entrepreneurial workplace, one in which your people take a higher level of ownership. There's a line I like to use, which is all managers are leaders, but not all leaders are managers, meaning I want everyone in a company to be a leader, to lead whatever they are responsible for, and to help all those they support. It's one in which everyone in the company leads critical initiatives and innovations, helps solve problems. They develop the action plans and help bring those action plans to completion. Because in a more traditional, top-down, autocratic environment, where the leadership team is responsible for fixing things that are going wrong, creating all the new innovations, it's not nearly as powerful when you can get your entire workforce on board with it. And it's also a bit challenging, too. If I could ask you, please, put your hands together, interlocking your fingers, and notice which thumb is on top. There is no better right or left thumb. Please separate your hands, put them back together and interlock so the other thumb is on top. How does that feel? Weird, strange? Now, if for some reason you decided, I want that uncomfortable way, for me it's the left thumb on top, to feel comfortable, how many days in a row would you need to practice that? Yeah, I heard 21 to 30 days to change a habit. The reason I share that with you is because creating an entrepreneurial workplace is not something where you can go back to your office and say, we're going to be more entrepreneurial. I want all of you to be leaders, make decisions, take more ownership, because it's not going to happen. This is a journey, not a destination, and it does take time and patience. There are also some key challenges. For leaders, you have to be willing to relinquish some control, which isn't going to be comfortable. For your managers who are used to being rated based on, did everything get done, it seems far safer to them to micromanage, stay on top of everything, or do it themselves because they know they'll do it on time and do it right. For your front line, it's tough because why should they make decisions? Why should they take more ownership when we're going to talk more about that in just a moment? For me, I've always enjoyed being entrepreneurial, going back to When I was 9 years old, I had a paper route, so clearly that doesn't happen anymore. And when I was 17, I started my first adult business, a teenage discotheque with my best friend. We converted the oldest building in the city of downtown Livermore, the old firehouse. When you've got a 17 and an 18-year-old launching a business, especially a teenage discotheque during the time of Saturday Night Fever, you get noticed, and we were on the front page of the paper quite a bit. And there were a couple of key takeaways, and the reason I share this with you is a few things. First of all, how many of you own your own business out there? A lot. You know it's pretty challenging. And I told people I got my master's degree before I got my bachelor's because this was far harder than anything I did in school. Secondly, a key motivating factor for your people is they want to make a difference in your company. That is cross-generational, baby boomers to millennials. They want to make a difference and have a meaningful impact. What's been cool for us when we go back, because this was, well, quite a while ago, and when I go to downtown Livermore, anyone know where downtown Livermore is or go through there? Nice, all right. So you know that town has changed a lot. The only thing left standing from when we first opened our disco is that building with the paint job we put on it in 1978 that we won a beautification award from the city for. It was very cool to make a meaningful difference. The other reason I'm showing you this picture is in case you didn't know I'm the one on the right. I wanted to show proof that at one point in time, I did have hair. And since then, clearly my hair has gone away, and thankfully also the silk shirts and the angel flight pants. I want to come down here with you because I'd rather hang out down this way, and you aren't going to see a whole lot of slides today. Let me share with you what's going to happen over the next hour and 15 minutes. I've got about an hour's worth of material I want to cover with you. There's a lot I want to go through. And for the last 15 minutes, we'll take questions. After that, I'm heading out to the book signing table. I've got a couple of books out there. Please catch me out there if you don't get any questions answered. This time is for you. And I want to make sure it's as valuable as possible. I don't leave until around 4 this afternoon. You're welcome to schedule time with me so we can spend time together afterwards. I want to take you through stories about the power of creating this entrepreneurial workplace. And what happens when the same decision occurs in an entrepreneurial workplace as opposed to a typical top-down autocratic workplace. I also want to take you through some of the key challenges and how to overcome them. I developed a 4-step process around conflict resolution, addressing concerns, questions, objections from a sales vernacular. And what I hear from clients I work with and in my own businesses, it's extremely powerful because when I interview companies and their personnel from top to bottom, what do you think is the number one complaint that comes up? Begins with a C. Communication, number one, comes up almost every time. What the communication is may vary, but it becomes a number one issue. And this process will help you. I'm also going to take you through my 10 keys to entrepreneurial success as well. The stories I share with you today are across industries. They're from my companies, from my clients' companies. They are designed around those of you who are running your own business and anyone who is managing a business or anyone who will be a future manager in a business. What I have found, though, working with companies in a wide variety of industries, is what works and the challenges remain the same. That the biggest difference is the size of the company. That if I'm working with a Fortune 100 or a boutique company, it's like a ship. The bigger the ship, the longer it takes to turn around. I want to start with a story of a client of mine who's based in California. And before I do, let me tell you what I typically take a client through because it will help you in terms of developing your own entrepreneurial workplace. I take them through a series of workshops. And in each workshop, and this is a key for you, is at the end, they develop an action plan, a simple action plan that they can execute between one workshop and the next. You want to give them a chance to build some skills and create success. Where they start with something small, a communication improvement, a process improvement, something where they can make a difference. And they keep making bigger and bigger decisions to where eventually they are leading critical initiatives, innovations, and leading the action plans on those innovations. Now, this company in California, they have a satellite facility up in Oregon. This company was doing extremely well. The Oregon facility was busting at the seams, and they were doing what you would typically do. They were waiting on the leadership team in California to tell them, what do we do? Are we staying? Are we going? Where are we going? After going through the workshops, they decided to take on that initiative themselves. One team took on the parking problem because there was no more room. First, they went to the landlord and got them to restripe the lot, making it more efficient. They also asked the landlord if they had additional spaces nearby and got about a dozen more. Then they went to neighboring businesses and asked, do you have any unused spaces? And got about 20 more. They put incentives in place for employees to ride share, to ride their bike to work, to use mass transit. And the parking problem went away. A second team looked at how do they use their site more efficiently. How many of you are familiar with lean principles, Six Sigma, things like that? A few hands. Just helps to make your site work more efficiently. And so they put lean principles in place to use their site as best they could. They also had unused space they had never considered before because it was going to require a considerable capital expenditure of around $100,000. But now they realized they had the power to recommend that improvement. The third team was looking at a new site because they thought the first two teams were putting Band-Aids on things. And they realized we might be able to stay. They changed course. This company was running a single shift. They had tried a swing shift before, but it had failed. And they realized now what caused it to fail. So they decided they were going to reinstitute a swing shift. Now the leadership team comes up from California, and now the roles reverse. Because usually, you know what happens. The leadership team is standing out in front of the Oregon team and telling them, this is what you're going to do. Instead, now the leadership team becomes the audience. Their role is to provide the global vision, guidance, sponsorship, mentorship, support, and help get rid of roadblocks. The leadership team didn't know what the Oregon team's recommendation was going to be. What they told the leadership team is with an expenditure of roughly $100,000, we believe we can stay here for up to another 5 years. With some minor modifications, the leadership team approved it. And the Oregon team was jumping up and down, hugging each other, because they got to stay in their same old building for up to another 5 years. Because it was their decision and they owned it. Now, this move was going to be an easy 7-figure move. They had one customer who was a dominant customer for their business. And that customer, while knowing what their situation was, wasn't going to be overly understanding about this disruption. When I talked with the president, I thought he'd think the greatest savings were the 7 figures and the lack of disruption. He said, no. It's the change in communication that I see. It's the shift in our culture because that's what's going to lead us into the future. Now, what I want to do is flip this scenario. And let's say you had this exact same solution, but it happened traditionally. Now the leadership team comes up from California, and they tell the team in Oregon, listen, this is going to be a 7-figure move. We can't afford that or the disruption to our business. You're going to need to figure things out. We're going to put an incentive in place for employees who want to ride share, use mass transit. We'll do that to help you. Secondly, we'll invest in that unused space, but you are not using your plant as efficiently as you could. You need to use lean principles, make it work better. Third, we are not using the full capacity of this plant. I know you tried a swing shift and it didn't work. You need to figure out what went wrong and get it to work. How does that Oregon team react then? Are they jumping up and down, hugging each other? Or are they begrudgingly going forward with the plan? Or at worst, sabotaging the plan because they don't want it to work. They're thinking ownership is just cheap. We want to be in a shiny new building. But when you can get your people to take the ownership, then those decisions come to fruition. The only thing the leadership team had to do was write purchase orders. The Oregon team did everything else. Now you can think this is great because when this does happen, it is really powerful. It works great. And there are also some key challenges that get in the way. First of all, the first one ties to employee needs. When employees are surveyed, I gave you one of their needs, that need to make a meaningful difference. What do you think the number one employee need is? Job security. Very good. Usually I don't get that as the first guess. I get more altruistic responses. It's safety and security, the ability to feed themselves and their family. That is first and foremost for them. So why should they take a risk? Why should they make a decision? Why should they do anything that could put that safety and security at risk? What's the point? Isn't it far safer to just do what you're told? So that way, if something goes sideways, you can just say, I did what I was told. Why take that risk? Let me give you an analogy and a story as to how you get people to be willing to take that risk. The first is I was doing a joint speaking engagement with a senior member of the National Speakers Association, and she said, I appreciate that you speak without a net. I had no idea what she meant by that. I used to have a joke about that where I'd say, I had no idea who a net was, and that fell flat every single time. So she told me, first of all, you present your own material. That leaves you vulnerable. People may or may not like it. Secondly, you don't use a lot of PowerPoint. I use little or none. So you're exposed. And third, I'd rather not be behind a podium. I'm introverted by nature, not extroverted, but I'd still rather be out here with you. So she said, you speak without a net. This is something those of you who have your own business can relate to. I have started some businesses with a safety net. I'd like to show you a product of mine. It's a bandage for split fingernails. I started this venture when I was an executive for Pepsi, got this product patented, and got it launched. And it's been in pretty much every chain store in the country and around the world. I didn't leave Pepsi until I was making more off of this product than I was as an executive for them. I had a safety net. That was way more comfortable. How many of you out there who raised your hand before as business owners have started that business with your savings or house on the line? Doesn't feel quite as comfortable, does it? Had done the same thing, started that business without the net. Your goal for your employees is to give them that safety net so they know when things go wrong. This is not a performance issue, it's a learning experience for them. Now, your words aren't going to be enough. If you go back and say, this is what I want, this is going to be this is a learning experience, not a performance issue. They're going to need to see your actions to back this up. This is going to take time for them to be comfortable and know, wow, you were sincere about this. The key thing you need to do is, as part of a delegation process, because that's what you're doing, to me, one of the most important steps is to set parameters. The easiest one as an example is money. They could spend up to $1,000 without approval. Anything over that, they need to come see you. It is your responsibility to set those parameters and set them in a way where they have the chance to succeed and a chance to fail, a chance to make mistakes. Because the way they're going to learn is not just by succeeding. They need to have a chance to have things go sideways and fix them, make them better. You want the parameters broad enough to where they have the chance to make mistakes, but nothing that's going to cause a serious problem for your business, other employees, or your customers. And they know that if they stay within those parameters, that's their safety net. You've got their back. They are good to go. If they step outside of it, that's when we're going to have a problem. And if you fail to put a parameter in place, that is obviously on you. You need to make sure those parameters are in place. The story around that is, I grew up in Colorado. Anyone here from Colorado? All right, we got a few Colorado people. Everyone always expects you to ski if you live in Colorado. And not always true. I grew up, I never skied there. I didn't ski for 2 reasons. One is I played sports, and the coaches didn't want you to go skiing, so you wouldn't get hurt. The second reason was every time, in my mind, when someone came back and they fell down, they ended up in a cast. They broke their leg, they broke their arm, and I didn't want to end up in a cast. Finally, in my 20s, I went skiing for the first time. The best thing that happened to me was I fell down. And guess what didn't happen? They ended up in a cast. I got to get up and learn from it, learn why I fell and get better at it. Your people need to know that when they fall down, they aren't going to end up in a cast. You got their back. It's a learning experience for them. And it takes a while to create that environment where they understand that's going to be true, that it's not putting that safety and security at risk. The second biggest issue, and when I tell you this and you think, okay, well, this doesn't really apply to me, I can tell you from my own companies and working with hundreds of companies, it probably does to at least some degree. And I'll also tell you when I get hired by companies, it's not companies who are sucking. It's companies who are doing well and want to get to the next level. This issue still is pervasive, which is your people will say, no one ever listens. I come up with all these ideas. I've identified all these problems and nothing ever changes. I put a half dozen ideas in that suggestion box and nothing ever happened. It's how your people are going to feel in most cases, to some degree, at least. I learned the hard lesson on this in a business I owned in the automotive industry. And we had a very entrepreneurial workplace. We were doing very well. We were servicing hundreds of dealerships between California and Colorado. And we wanted to help some of our long-term employees start their own business. We essentially made used cars look like new. And we had self-equipped vans to provide our service. We piloted a program with one of our guys to help him get started on his own. Instead of coming back with a van, he came back with this pickup and a camper shell and a completely different layout than ours. And it was so much better. We asked him, how come you never told us about this? He said, because you wouldn't have listened. Now, my partner and I were a bit surprised. We thought we had a very open relationship with everyone. We talked a little bit about it and then let it go. The pilot worked. We helped a couple others start their own business as well. And they came back with different versions of what the first guy did. We started converting our vans over, looking at what everyone else had done, and made our best choices. It amounted to about 80% of what the first guy did. So we thought he was going to say, wow, you really did listen. Instead, he said, see, I told you they wouldn't listen because we did 80% of what he did. Now, you might think this guy must have hated us. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. We'd have an annual holiday party. And he came to us one day and said, me and the rest of your team want to thank you for what you've done for us over the years. We're sponsoring the holiday party this year. You two just need to show up. We're buying the food, the drinks, just be there. Clearly didn't hate us. The miss was on us. We didn't set appropriate expectations up front, which are a couple of things. First of all, we need everyone's idea because your people are closest to the problems. They're the ones who have the best solutions. You need to get them intimately involved. And we didn't set that up properly. We would ask for input, but we didn't set the stage. And to let them know that it doesn't mean that every idea they bring up, we're going to institute. Now, if it's something they can do on their own or with a minor investment, you want to give them that latitude. When it comes to buying new vans, clearly we need to be involved in that decision. And to let them know that if they provide ideas, if 10% of their ideas, 25%, 50% get accepted, that is way ahead of where they would be if they hadn't told us anything. Because otherwise, the only way their ideas become instituted is if my partner and I thought of them ourselves. What we owe them are a few things. First of all is to thank them profusely for being willing to share. Because their ideas may be in conflict with ours, and they may be feeling they're putting that safety and security at risk. Isn't it easier just to go along with us? So you want to thank them for having the courage. Secondly, what you owe them is to close the loop. What did you do with their idea? Are you implementing it? Are you implementing part of it? If you aren't, how come? And then to thank them profusely again for being willing to have the courage to open up and share with you. One of the things you need to do to get their input is think about the setting. Where is a place they're going to be open? If you call them into your office, sit behind your desk and say, give me new ideas, you know that's not going to happen. What I did with another business of mine, a health and wellness company, we made things like shoulder wraps, spa socks, anything you could put in a microwave. I would take my sales team out on a quarterly basis. And we'd make it special. We'd leave around mid-afternoon. We'd go out for appetizers and cocktails. The cocktails didn't hurt in terms of creating openness, that fine line between openness and inebriation. And we got them to share with us. The agenda also helped. Everyone gave a personal update, a professional update on their piece of the business that they owned, as well as an initiative they were working on. And these sessions would go typically late into the night. And at the end, everyone is hugging each other because it's just a different experience. Create an environment where your people are willing to be open with you. The next thing I want to do, because you've been here for Vegas in 3 days, and if you've got to listen to me for over an hour, I like to think I'm entertaining. You could easily fall asleep. So I've got an activity for us to participate in. And there is a purpose for this activity as well, too. I promise there is. If for any reason you have done this activity before, please don't say anything to your neighbor. That activity is thumb wrestling. How many of you know how to thumb wrestle? I should see a fair number of hands. Okay. Yes, I'm going to be asking you in a moment to partner up with somebody in thumb wrestle, someone you came with, a friend, or to make a new friend. And I promise there's a purpose for this. If I could, can I borrow you for just a moment since you raised your hand? Just to demonstrate. Come on up with me. Now, just like the picture, doing this traditionally, you're interlocking your fingers. Typically, you go back and forth 3 times, and then try and pin the other person's thumb. If you pin their thumb, you win. That's the whole goal behind this. Now, we only have 2 rules in ours. Thank you, I appreciate that. One rule is that you do need to interlock, just like you normally do. You don't need to go back and forth 3 times. You can set your own rules. The only other rule is no other physical contact aside from this, because this needs to be a safe and injury-free exercise. Now, I have a little tool I need help with, which is, I have a train whistle. I have the train whistle for a couple of reasons. One is, I like trains. Secondly, once you get started in this exercise, you will never hear me over the exercise, only with the train whistle. I'm going to be giving you about a minute, and what I'd like you to do is count how many times you win, and want to see who ends up getting the most pins in the room. Again, I do not have a painting or $100 to give away. This is strictly for pride. So if you would, please find someone to pair up with. Any pins you get before the first train whistle do not count. Okay? But please pair up, find a partner. I will blow the train whistle. You will have about a minute to get as many pins as you can. Everyone got partners? All right. Get set and go. That train whistle helps, doesn't it? Plus, for those of you who know when you're up here for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, you need to save your voice. All right. How many of you had at least 5 pins? I see a few hands with 5. Anyone have over 10? You had over 10. Anyone with over 15? 20. Okay. How did you manage to get 20?
I had 40.
You had 40. How did you get 40?
We had 40 as well.
Thank you. Can you show us how you each got 40? Please stand up and share.
We just said the winner gets the most, so we said you get one, I get one, you get one.
That's exactly how you do it. Good job. Very nice. Usually there are 2 people who get that, who get the trick behind this, and it's not really a trick. The whole point is it can be to your advantage to collaborate instead of compete. That, you notice, no one had over 10, I believe, who competed, and they had 40 because they collaborated. Now understand, this is coming from someone who was highly competitive. I wouldn't let a 3-year-old win at Candyland. So I totally get wanting to compete. And yet, you've got to determine internally, where does collaboration and where does competition make sense? I want my salespeople competing against each other. But there are times it doesn't work. And I want to also define the difference. What's the difference between collaboration and the word I hear most often, which is compromise? What's the difference between the two? Anyone know? Yes, sir. Exactly. Collaboration is win-win. Compromise is lose-lose. Both parties are giving something up. And I usually hear compromise. Your goal is to collaborate and work together to find a solution that both parties can be happy with. Doesn't mean you're getting everything, but it means you're coming to a solution where you can both say, yeah, we're good. You don't feel like you have to give something up. One of the books I wrote on sales, on the sales process I developed, is Sitting on the Same Side of the Table, The Art of Collaborative Selling. I'll share with you later how you can get a free e-version of that book. And it all talks about moving away from traditional selling methodologies to how do you collaborate and develop those mutually beneficial relationships. I found my close percentage went up from about 30 to about 80, and it is so much nicer and so much more pleasant. Let me give you an example of the power in what I'm talking about in terms of potentially when competition internally is not good. One of the clients I work with is a medical device company, and the center I work with for them does all the repairs. Their goal is to have less than 100 pieces of what they call work in progress, number of units that they have to fix. I'm getting set up for a workshop. One of their managers is in early, and he said, I'm doing really well. My team has a work in progress of under 50. But one of the other managers in our department, his work in progress is over 700. And you could see he took a lot of pride in that. He's kicking butt. That's got to help him for raises, bonuses, promotions. He should be really excited. But is that good for the company? For the employees in that department or for the customers? No. It's not good. It's only good for him. It's a bad measure. As I mentioned in every workshop, and something you want to do yourself with your team is develop action plans. He and the other managers in that department took on the action plan of how do we work together better? How do we make sure all of us are successful, which meant doing things like sharing headcount. One of the first things they had to do was go back to their boss and say, we need a more accurate measure. We need a team measure, not just an individual measure, because this is not serving us properly. Secondly, they had to go back to their teams, because you know the team that was doing well. When they were asked to help out the team that wasn't doing well, you know what they said. If they would just do their job, we wouldn't have to help them. But using the process I'm going to share with you in just a moment, they were able to get everyone in accord. They came back 2 weeks later. The manager who was under 50 was still under 50. The manager who was at 700 was under 350 and going down, because they got everybody to work together. And that's the power of collaboration versus competition. You need to make the decision, where is it appropriate to compete? And when is it appropriate not to? And are the measures that I have established for my team leading us to the proper outcome and goal? Now what I'd like to take you through is the 4-step process around conflict resolution, concerns, questions, objections that I developed. And I think you'll find this will work very well not only in your professional life, but if you can do it in your personal life when things are emotionally charged, it's pretty powerful. I have a question for you. We are being recorded, so I want to hear everybody answer this question. There is a one-word answer that I get almost exclusively every time to this question. You go home to your significant other. You walk in the door and you know immediately something is wrong. You ask them that perfunctory question, honey, what's wrong? What's the worst answer you can get back? Nothing. Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten another answer besides nothing. Because what do you do with nothing? Nothing. And why do they say nothing? Because they think you're going to fight. Or, okay, blaming the guys more for this one, you're going to try and fix things. Or you're going to try and share why they're wrong. I'm sorry?
I'll tell them that's not nothing.
What I want to encourage you to do is get your people to open up. That includes your significant other as well. And the way you want to do it is with your body language, with your voice, be able to convey that you are really willing to listen. When it's emotionally charged, it's tough because we know if we have that reaction of, what's wrong now, you know where that's going. So if you can do something with an open body language, a softer tone, to be able to let them know, honey, I can tell something's really bothering you. Why don't we open up a glass of wine? Let's sit down and I really want to hear what's going on. Whatever works for you to get them to open up. And then once you do, now I want to help you take them through a 4-step process. I would tell you with regards to this process, you can definitely share this with others. It is not intended to be a magic trick. That I have companies I work with who laminate this process and put it around the building. So it's a standard for them to work with. The acronym is LACE. And it's coming up shortly. Let me give you the while it's coming up. Oops, went too far. The first step is the obvious one, listen. Listen to their questions and concerns. Now you may say, of course, that's really obvious. But our natural tendency is to want to interrupt. I would encourage you to sit in silence. Don't even do the because that will just make them feel rushed. But to just listen in silence. You can nod your head or smile. Nonverbal cues are okay, but just to listen. And when it's emotionally charged, it's hard for us. Because especially if you have ideas, you're thinking, if they would just shut up, I could fix this. And you can't go there. You've got to fully listen. The A is the toughest step, and I want to tell you where this came from. A former business partner of mine, her husband taught mediation at UCLA and UC Irvine, and he had a divorce mediation practice. One of his keys, and he was very successful, was with the divorcing couple, one spouse spoke first. This wasn't going to be volleyball. One person got to put all their issues on the table before they spoke up. It was the key to success. The A, when I generally have guesses, it's answer. Answer their concern. And it is not. This is the easiest step to skip. I will tell you when you practice it, if you have your teams practice it, this step will get skipped. It is to ask what else. What other questions or concerns do they have? And to keep asking, because congratulations, you got them to open up. Pandora's box is now open. You've got to let them unload everything. Because if not, they're thinking about all the other things that are bothering them too, and not listening to you. Plus, even if you fully listen, what do they think is going to happen next? Back to the beginning, we're going to fight. You're going to try and fix me or tell me why I'm wrong. When you ask what else, they realize you really want to hear. I had someone ask me, do they think you're deflecting, not being honest because you aren't answering the first question? I can tell you that's never happened to me, and I'm not aware of it happening to anyone else. And just to notice when you're practicing or having your team practice, because they are going to want to skip to providing a solution right here. The C is to clarify. Clarify their questions and concerns. I would encourage you to go in order. You can go back and forth between A and C if you don't understand the question. If it's just to confirm, I'd let it go, and I'd encourage you to write down what they have to say. So if you aren't clear on what they're saying, to go back and forth, totally okay. Now, you have been so patient at this time. You haven't fought. You haven't interjected. You haven't tried to fix. Getting to the E, you've got to be thinking, I get to explain my side of this now. No, you don't. The E is to explore a collaborative solution, something that works for both of you. And this is done still by asking questions. A key question I like to ask is, what solutions can you think of that would be good for, it's collaborative, right? Both of us. Not just them, but for both of us. I'd encourage you to continue to ask questions. For ideas you have, I'd encourage you to bring them up in the form of a question, an open-ended question, not closed. Not, do you like this idea, yes or no? But this was a thought I had. What do you like about it, and what might you change? Because there's a good chance that it's not black or white, it's gray. That there are things they're going to like and things they aren't going to like. Give them a chance to share. You can go through the whole process without ever making a statement and coming to resolution, even if they fully know what you are doing. With the company I was working with, I sometimes pair up with people. And there's an advantage I have. When it's your business and you're close to it, you know the answer to things a lot of times. I don't. I can't fix anything with the clients I work with. I work with a welding company. I know they have a bend machine. You know what I know that piece of equipment does? It bends things. That's it. I know nothing. I can't fix anything. So all I can do is keep asking questions. The person I partnered up with, they told me, was someone who was a bit challenging, a long-term employee who didn't like to change. And he kept saying, well, this could be fixed if they did this. There is a key word. When you start hearing the word they a lot less, you know you're making progress. I kept asking him, what can you do? Within your scope of influence, what can you impact? And he kept coming back with more and more answers, started coming up with solutions. At the end of an exercise, and again, I'd encourage you to ask this question too, what are your key takeaways? I had one person say, I just know that at the end of every exercise, you're going to ask for my key takeaways. What I encourage you to do is ask, what did they get out of it? That person said, what I got out of this is I never knew how much a part of the solution I could be. It can be a powerful process. The next thing I want to take you through are my personal 10 keys to entrepreneurial success. I used to give that talk solely to entrepreneurs and college graduate classes, and that would be a full hour-long talk. I was speaking before a college graduate class, and for their semester, they had a project, which was to take a product to market. They had a $5 budget, and by the end of the semester, they had to launch a product. One of the people in the class was creative and said, if I get investors, can I spend more? The professor thought it was creative too and said yes. At the end of the semester, they invited me back and presented me with this coffee cup with my 10 keys to entrepreneurial success on it. I can tell you that cup has remained pristine. I have never put coffee on it. Well, I know you can see the 10 keys. I want to walk you through them briefly so you know what they mean and how to apply them. The first is patience and perseverance. This actually came from my sister's mother-in-law. I'm going to be referring back to that nail bandage because it's an easy example. I thought it would take me 2 years to launch. It took me 5 years. And she said, the reason you made it, the reason I believe you were successful with this was because you were patient and you persevered. Because you know, as a leader, with some things you do, there's 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and you've got to work your way through all of it. And to me, those are two attributes that are critical when you're looking at key innovations and challenges that you face in your workplace. To be patient and persevere. Number 2 is to make a commitment. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs have come to me and said, I have a great idea for you. No, you've got a great idea for yourself. But people don't want to do it. They don't want to take the initiative. I can't tell you how often, I'm guessing you've heard this too, where people say, we've had the same problem, it's there year after year, nothing ever changes. Because nobody makes a commitment to fix it. Your goal in this entrepreneurial workplace is everybody is involved in fixing problems, leading innovations. So people are making a commitment to make things better. It's not all on you as leaders of your company. Number 3 is develop a business plan. And this is not the 50 or 100-page plan when you're seeking investors. This is the 1 to 3-page plan that is your Bible. It's on the wall in your office or your cubicle. That is living, breathing. You change as things change internally and externally. I would encourage as many people in your organization, if not everyone, to have a business plan that ties back to your corporate vision that you have provided or your department vision. And once you have that, the next obvious step is establish your vision and goals. What I'm talking about in terms of vision is not your mission statement. It's not the plaque on the wall in your lobby. It's your desired outcome. Where do you want to go from where you are today into the future? And the goals to support them, short and long term. How many of you are familiar with the SMART goal setting process? Quite a few hands. What I would encourage you is, if you are familiar with it, to make sure it's being used. And for those of you who don't know it, to look it up. If your goals have these 5 attributes that tie back to SMART, you will find that there is a far greater likelihood those goals get completed. I believe I skipped one. Number 5 is the network. Now, does anyone know who Richard Carlson is? Is the name familiar? You probably know his books. He wrote the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. And in one of those books, he said, network before you need the relationship, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I would add something else to that, which is network before, not only that, but network selflessly. Network not just for your benefit, but for the other person's benefit. Because if you're networking with those internally, externally, people that you touch and impact, and ask how you can help them, you know you've got a far greater likelihood when you need their help, they'll be there for you. Number 6 is be your own boss. As I mentioned earlier, I want everyone in my companies to feel like they are leaders of their piece of the business. I want them to feel like they are their own boss. And number 7 is to capitalize properly. When someone asks me, how do I do that? I tell them, first of all, put together as accurate of a budget as you can. Then add 50% or double it and hope it's enough. Because we plan for everything to go right. Yeah. We don't plan for things to go sideways. Using that nail bandage as an example again. When I launched this goes back to the days where you did not have online searches for patents and trademarks. You had to go to a patent library. Our attorney searched, we thought we were clean. We had packaged our product, we were ready to go 2 weeks before we launched. Guess what we found on the market? A product with our name on it, and it was trademarked. So we had to throw out everything we had, start back over again. If we didn't have money budgeted for things to go sideways, we would have been in trouble and potentially out of business. Number 8 ties back to number 2. Get started and just do it. Make that first step. It's the old Nike saying. We have a tendency to procrastinate, put things off. We want to just take that first step. Number 9, do your homework. And what I mean by that is, most companies and people that I know, especially leaders, come to solutions too quickly. They don't do their homework. They don't brainstorm, put all the ideas on the table, try and make sure the best solution occurs. Talk with all of those impacted so they have a voice and can share and create buy-in. Otherwise, it becomes a Band-Aid. I hear frequently, why bother? We tried to fix this and it just goes back to the way we've always done it. Because the solutions don't stick. And number 10 is take the long way home. Because we do want a shortcut. A great example, going back to that bandage. Best thing our attorney ever did for us. He told us right out of the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they shall come. You need to make your product. We want to do it the easy way. We just want to get a patent on it, license it to somebody else, let it be their problem, and they could send us checks. Wouldn't that be great? How many of you have seen commercials for those companies who help you with your inventions? Probably should see a lot of hands on that one. They've been around forever. I saw an interesting article recently on LegalZoom talking about the level of success people had who went through that kind of process regardless of company. And you can pretty much guess what that level of success was. When you take the shortcut, it doesn't go well for you. I don't know anyone who's launched a product who has ever made it taking a shortcut. I've got a couple of closing stories for you. Before I do, just a couple of things as well. First of all, as a thank you today for being here, I want to offer you e-versions of 2 of my books. This first one, sitting on the same side of the table, The Art of Collaborative Selling. It's a very easy read book on my selling philosophy and process. It will go deeper into LACE. My second book, I had the honor of co-authoring with Jack Canfield. Anyone know who Jack Canfield is? Yeah, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Yeah. He was the co-creator of that series. Had no idea. It's the second best-selling book series ever to the Bible. Myself and 40 others contributed on this book. The chapter I wrote is on creating an entrepreneurial workplace. If you would like these books, going to make it very easy for you. You just need to reach out to my marketing director, Charmaine Bunker, at the email address below. In the subject line, just put Cater Source. There are no other obligations. I do write blogs. You would get my blogs unless if you don't want them, because I don't sell anything, they're just informational. Just put down, don't want the blog, and she will not include you on the mailing list. Had an honor on this book, too, I wanted to share. Celebrity Press, the publisher, represents about 250 authors annually, and their focus is around celebrity authors like Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy, J. Conrad Levinson. At the end of the year, they have a big party for all their books that became bestsellers, which this one did. And at the end of the week, they have an after party. Now, as I mentioned to you, I qualified for my AARP card. I was tired. I went to bed. On Monday, I'm picking up my voicemails, and my contact from the publisher is saying, we're trying to find you. You won our Author of the Year award. I beat out the other 250 other authors with my contribution. So it really gave to me great validation around this whole concept of creating an entrepreneurial workplace. My third book is, and I was fortunate here, became a 3-time #1 bestseller called Let Them See You Sweat. That one is for sale also at the bookstores. Lessons I've learned in my personal journey with stress. And Jack Canfield was kind enough to endorse that book for me, which I'm sure didn't hurt at all. I'm going to leave this information up here for just a moment, too, so you have a chance to capture it. If the first and third books are out at the bookstore, for some reason the shipment on the second book did not make it here, but if you want either of those 2 autographed, I will be going out to the book signing table afterwards. Had a couple of closing stories for you. We talked about earlier what the role of the leader is, providing vision, guidance, mentorship, sponsorship, and support. I'd like to touch on support for a moment. I always thought of support as being this grandiose thing if you really wanted to make a difference. And I learned the other way. Back when I was 29 or 30, I got promoted to being regional manager for Pepsi for San Francisco and Oakland. When I took over both facilities, I was going around meeting with all my different teams and asking, okay, I want your input. I was sitting down with the route sales team in Oakland, asking typical questions. What's working? What do you want to change? One of the guys said to me, listen, we were here long before you got here. We're going to be here long after you leave. Just don't screw it up while you're here. except to use the 4-letter word a little more crass and screw. And I said, okay, I get it. I understand. And I'd still like to hear. And he said, as a satellite facility to San Francisco, we get our paychecks one day later than they do. Do you think we can get our paychecks one day earlier? And I said, I don't know. Let me find out. I reached out to my contact in the county who I had a relationship with. Goes back to number 5 on the 10 keys. Network before you need the relationship. I asked him, could the team in Oakland get their paychecks one day earlier? He said, sure. I never gave it a second thought. About 6 months later, I'm sitting down with this same team and just asking again, what's going on? How are things going? What's working? What do we need to change? Same guy said, I want to thank you. You're the first person to come in here and do what they said they were going to do. The only thing I had personally done for this person in that 6-month period of time was get him his paycheck one day earlier. I was coaching a VP at a Fortune 100 company, and she said, I am really challenged. I was just given a new department. With all the other departments I run, I know how to do things better than they do. I know nothing about what these guys do. What do you suggest? And I said, I'd suggest you ask each of them individually and privately one question. What can you do to support them? I'm betting there is one answer you don't get, which is, personally, teach me how to do my job better. If they need more training, you can arrange it. She and I debriefed again about 2 weeks later, and she was really excited. She said, that was so cool. I can't tell you how many of them said no one had ever asked them that question before and how much it meant to them. The other key challenge in all this, we know this, change is hard. Change is hard for us. It's hard for our people. The closer you get to your front line, where stability matters even more, it's even tougher for them. It's a difficult thing to do. And one of your goals is to help people get comfortable for change, because even if it is positive and better, it's difficult. I had an engagement in Ireland last month, and I was touring afterwards. Met a doctor named Miles Chang, and he had gone to a conference on artificial intelligence. He said, this is really cool. It's going to have such a huge impact on the medical community. Because he said, for example, for me, been a doctor for a long time, if I'm diagnosing someone, I may have 100 pieces of data. But with artificial intelligence, there may be 1,000,000 pieces of data to provide that diagnosis, which should give us a much more accurate diagnosis, right? But there's a challenge there. The doctor is used to doing it. Now you're telling him, you aren't doing this anymore. Not going to be comfortable for him. For the patients, they're used to that doctor-patient connection. And that will at least partially go away. He walked into the doctor's office of a friend of his, and on that doctor's desk was a stethoscope. And he said, why do you have that stethoscope? I haven't used one in over 20 years. And he said, it's because it makes my patients feel comfortable. Not that he actually used it. As I open with a quote, and I am going to be taking your questions right after this quote, anything you want to cover off on, I think, how am I doing? Ooh, right on time. That's pretty good, huh? I want to share a quote just as I open with one, and this one comes from that iconic band, the Eagles. It's from their song, Already Gone. One of the lines in that song goes, so oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains, and we never even know we have the key. I'm hoping from today I have given you some keys to help you unlock chains and create the entrepreneurial workplace you desire. Thank you very much. Thank you.